Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Dave from the camera store, and today we're talking about the Ricoh GR IIIx. So this is the Ricoh GR IIIx. Now it shares a lot of similarities to the previous GR3. They do give you a very big sensor though. This is an APS-C sensor in the tiniest of bodies, so the image quality is very good from a little camera like this. Now the previous GR3 features a fixed 28mm equivalent lens, but this one is the new version, is a 40mm lens. So why a 40mm lens on this camera? Well, there's a lot of people who love using this camera for shooting street, for instance, and there's some really sort of classic focal lengths that kind of come along with that genre. So a 24, a 28, a 35, and a 50 seem to be the most popular lens choices for that style of shooting. Now, me personally, I love a 35mm lens. I make no bones about it. It's one of my favorite focal lengths. So the original GR3 appeased me because I did like that 28mm because I could crop into 35 quite easily. But if you're on the other side of that spectrum and you're closer to a 50mm lens, that's your focal length of choice, a 40mm lens kind of gets you much closer to that. It has a much different look than a 28mm wide angle. So let's get into it more about the details of this camera and how it functions and how it works. Let's talk about the design of this camera. Now, it is a magnesium alloy frame, which is really quite nice, and is about 5 grams heavier than the GR3. It is just marginally thicker, maybe about a half a millimeter. So it's really basically the exact same size and shape of the original GR3, and that's a good thing because it's a very lightweight camera. There are a few things that I like about this camera and a few things that I don't. First off, the control layout and the dials are set up pretty nicely. One thing I really do appreciate is that on the top control dial here, there is a locking switch. So if I'm putting it in manual or program or aperture priority, it stays locked in there. And a camera like this is one you're going to take in and out of your pocket a lot. There's a good chance that those dials are going to get pushed around and moved, so being able to lock that main switch is a really nice touch. Now on the back of the camera there is a toggle switch which gives me the ability to do my exposure compensation and also enter into a bunch of different menu systems. Now I am finding with the exposure compensation toggle switch that I am hitting it accidentally, so I need to be very conscientious that my exposure is correct for what I want. But I do like that it's a push button, so I can enter the menu system and work that way. Now, on the back of the camera, there's nothing new compared to the GR3, and the same thing I didn't really care for on the GR3 was this dial on the back. I think it could be a little better quality feeling. It hasn't failed me yet, and it still seems to be working just fine. That's something I'd like to see them address if they do make another version of it. This camera does use the same battery found in the GR3. It's the DB110, and you're looking at about 200 shots on a full charge. So it's not something that's going to give you all-day shooting. I'd highly recommend an extra battery, or if you're more serious about your street photography, at least 2 batteries. Now, we can charge it through USB-C, so if you're taking a quick lunch, give it a quick top up and we can take care of it that way. However, one kind of gripe I have about this camera, and I wish they would have included, is the ability to have an articulating screen. Now, yeah, it would have added a little bit of size potentially as far as the thickness goes, but I think with a 40mm lens especially, I like the idea of being able to frame my subjects a little more accurately because it's a little bit tighter than the GR3's 28mm equivalent. So having the ability to articulate my screen and get low angle shots and be able to frame my shots a little better would be nice. Now, we do have the option with the hot shoe here to put on additional flash, but more importantly, if you want to put on an optical viewfinder, because with a 40mm, like I said, you're a little bit tighter framing, and it's nice to be a little more accurate with that. Now, even though the rear screen is not articulating, which I would prefer, it is a touchscreen with just over 1 million dots of resolution, so it is quite effective and it works quite well. Now, you are looking at a single card slot as well. It's only UHS 1 compatible, but that's fine because this camera is not a sports and action kind of camera, so I'm not too worried about that. 1 card slot, just fine for a camera like this. Now, you do have an attachment with this camera if you want a bigger focal length. If 40mm isn't enough for you, there is an optional lens you can attach to it through the front here, sort of bayonet mount. However, it does change the size and the shape of the camera drastically. It no longer is a pocketable camera. So for me, with these style of cameras, I like to keep them as minimalist as possible because they slip in and out of a pocket quite easily. Now, packed into this tiny little camera is a crop sensor, giving us great image quality. Now, it's a 24 megapixel sensor, and honestly, it's nothing new or anything that we've ever seen before. It's the exact same sensor found in the Ricoh GR3, and that's a good thing. Take a look at this shot here and how I've been able to lift up the shadows without being penalized very much at all. I like the level of detail I can achieve out of that, and speaking of the detail, the biggest change with this new GR IIIx is the lens. This is what everybody's talking about. So it's a brand new 40mm 2.8 lens. It has 7 elements and 5 different groups, and 2 of those elements are spherical. So we are getting some very good image quality out of this. Take a look at these shots here. You can really see that the center sharpness is fantastic, and as we move away to the edges, we are retaining great quality of detail. Now I did have to readjust how I was shooting with the 40mm lens. Now the longer you spend with a particular focal length, the more you just get used to it. It becomes a sort of a basic instinct as you walk into a room or a scene. You just know exactly where you want to stand to get the framing that you want. Now I did find the 40mm a little bit tight sometimes, especially when I was shooting anything indoors or I didn't have the opportunity to back up. I would have liked to have a little bit wider angle, but the longer I used it, the more I became very comfortable with it. Now the other part of the equation is the ability to autofocus, and this camera has several different autofocus modes you can work with. There are the very much standard ones, like we have different groups of autofocus points, we have tracking autofocus points, and new with the GR IIIx is eye control focus. Now if you are currently own a GR3, don't worry, that firmware is coming, you're going to get the same feature set. Something unique with the Ricoh GR system that I never thought I'd use as much, but I find myself using all the time, is their snap focus. Now the camera itself turns on very quickly and it allows you to take a picture fast, but what if you're in a crowd or the subject you want is going to be behind some distractions that the camera might have trouble autofocusing on? You can set it up for snap focus of varying different distances. And this is super handy. Turn the camera on, take the picture, and it instantly locks to that focal range. You don't have to worry about it trying to focus or tracking anything. This camera also features a built-in ND filter. Now it's a 2-stop ND filter, which is really handy to have. If I want to drop my shutter speed down, if I want to shoot a waterfall, for instance, I have a lot more flexibility than if I didn't have an ND filter, for sure. The other thing I like the ND filter for is when I'm shooting video and I need to control my shutter speeds. As much as it's nice to have a built-in ND filter for video, this camera really isn't a video powerhouse at all. I mean, we're limited to 1080 video. We're not even going to 4K, but we are up to 60 frames per second. So a little bit of clips here and there, certainly going to be fun that way, but it's not something I want to record a lot of serious video with. And as a final bit about this new lens is its minimum focusing distance. In the regular focusing modes, we can go down to 20 centimeters, which is really decent and close. But if I want to go even closer than that, I can push one button, go into macro mode, and I can go down as little as 12 centimeters. As I'm walking around with this camera shooting all kinds of street scenes and stuff, it's really nice to have the flexibility of being able to focus very close on any kind of architectural details or flowers, for instance. So overall, what do I think of this camera? Well, I quite like it, and I like it for the same reasons that I like the original GR3. The reason I like it so much is that it's a very small, compact camera that delivers very good image quality, but it gives me all the control that I want as far as full manual, autofocus modes, manual modes, and very trick features like snap focus. Now that makes for a very cool package to walk around with that is very discreet but still fits into your pocket quite easily. I like how quickly this camera starts up, and the more I started working with it, the more I could really time it. So it just start up and it's very, very quick. It's less than a second from the time you start it to being able to take a picture. Little trick features like that make it a very handy little tool to have. Now, if you're carrying around a cell phone and you want to really step up your game, this is going to be a camera that doesn't take up that much more space in your cell phone, but it gives you significantly better image quality. There are a bunch of features I haven't really dived into with this camera, some minor little upgrades, things as simple as if you want to process your RAW file in camera. With the GR3 and its current firmware, you'd have to go into process your RAW file and then go back into the menu system to reprocess another photo. Now I can just go one photo after another and process it that way, with some nice little features like being able to convert it to black and white or adjust the horizon a little bit. Tiny little details that are going to find its way into the GR3 through firmware, but the main reason you're buying this new GR IIIx is because you love a 40mm lens or you love a 50mm lens and this is almost there. You're going to like that little bit better compression than you get with the 28mm on the GR3. That's going to be a very personal choice, but either way, you have a camera that's going to deliver exceptional image quality for the size that it is, and you're going to fall in love with it the more time you spend with it. So I, of course, want to know what you guys think of this camera. Do you wish they would have come up with a 50mm range or an 85mm range or something like that? Let me know in the comments down below. Follow us both on Instagram, and please subscribe and hit the notification bell. We'll catch you again next time. Hey, thanks for sticking around and watching this episode on the new GR IIIx. If you want to watch more of our recent content, click up here, and if you are Canadian and you want to shop local, click down here.